Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess and today we're here for another February reading wrap up and March TBR. I figured we'd go through all of the books that I read in February, although I did just do a 24-hour reading vlog, so if you haven't seen that yet, you can check that out on my channel. But I figured I would kind of go through all of the books that I did read. I can't remember how many, let's see, 6 this month, which I feel like lately I've been reading quite a few for what I personally am used to, just like in a regular month. But I read 6 this month and it felt really nice to get through a lot of books. So I'm really excited to share what books I did read with you guys and what books I'm looking forward to reading next month. Overall, I had a February TBR of reading Frankenstein, 28 Summers, The Maid, The Fury, and When in Rome. Unfortunately, I never got to 28 Summers or When in Rome, and that's mostly because I'm kind of a mood reader and I ended up not really being in the mood for any kind of like romance or I don't know, anything along those lines. I was more in like the thriller type mood. And so I decided to just put those aside. They have been on my TBR for a while, which is why I put them on my TBR this time around, because I thought I would be able to get through them a lot faster. But I ended up reading some different books instead. So the books that I ended up reading were The Maid, The Fury, First Lie Wins, Wanna Know a Secret, Hello Girls, and Frankenstein. I'll go through each one of these books, including ratings that I gave them. But overall, I feel like I had a pretty decent reading month. I think that I've had better reading months, to be honest, but overall I thought that it was pretty good. Like I liked the books that I read. So I'll go through them. I will give you guys recaps of what I thought and what the book is about as well, so that if you want to read it, then you're welcome to also. I will say one caveat is I'm going to do spoilers for only one book, which will be Frankenstein, only because it's such an old book that I feel okay with doing spoilers, but all of the other books usually are spoil free for my channel. I typically do not do spoilers unless I explicitly say that there are spoilers, and I try really hard to take that seriously because I have had books spoiled for me on YouTube and it always bums me out when that happens, even from like a side comment. It's like sometimes it just like ruins the whole story. So that's the only book that I will spoil, but I'm gonna jump right into it. And first off, we read The Maid, which I actually have a physical copy for. I don't typically have physical copies of books, but I actually picked this one up from a little free library near my house. This book was really good. I really liked it a lot. It was basically about this girl who's hired as a maid. She's not really like other people. Like she's kind of quirky and a little bit different. And she, typically speaking, goes through life alongside her grandmother, who helps her out with understanding people's perspectives, like what people mean by certain things. But unfortunately, her grandmother dies. So she has to go through life by herself at this point, but she has a job again as a maid. She works at a hotel and she finds herself in the middle of some, let's just call it criminal activity. And because she is a little quirky and doesn't really read into situations appropriately, she doesn't really know how to answer to questions or talk about like where she's been or anything like that, because she's not reading into what people mean in the right way. I thought this one was really good because it's very different from The Housemaid by Frida McFadden, first of all, like extremely different. It's a little bit more whimsical as well, although there is some mystery in this book. And I thought that it was interesting too, because there are a lot of times where you just feel annoyed by your main character for like maybe making a mistake or doing something like opposite of how you would do it. But because of like how the main character was in this book, where she is just kind of like not understanding people's signals or like what people's intentions are or anything like that, because of that, you're not really upset with her. More so, you're just like, ugh, Molly, please. You're really rooting for her. So I thought that it was a really interesting take on it. It made me feel completely different. Because I got this one from my little free library as well, there's actually some person's annotations in here, which initially I was a little annoyed by, only because they kept making comments on the main character and like her lack of understanding of things. But then toward the end, I actually thought that it was fun, because when I was trying to like figure things out, I was able to almost like have a conversation with the person who had read it before me. Like they were figuring things out at the same time I was. And so I got to read their comments in the margins, and it was like a little conversation. So it was very fun. I really liked this one. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really good. It just wasn't quite a 5-star for me. me. The next book that I read was called The Fury. This one is by Alex Michaelides. I think I said his name wrong in one of my last videos, so I apologize for that. But Michaelides is, I believe, how you say his last name. This one was hard, and I was a little bit nervous to read this one because I really liked Silent Patient. It was one of the first books I read as I was getting into reading alongside an Emily Henry book. I wasn't so crazy about The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, so I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel about this one. I remember when I read The Maidens thinking that the amount of Greek mythology that was in the book was just a little too much for me, and I felt kind of the same way about this book. When I had gotten it off of the library app, I realized that it was literally set on a Greek island, and I was like, there's going to be a lot of Greek mythology in here, and there was, but not nearly as much as The Maidens. It started off by being kind of similar, like giving me the same vibe as And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Basically, this book is about a few set of characters who go to a remote Greek island, and then there's a death. And so people are trying to figure out what happened and so on and so forth. However, there are tons of twists in this book. But something that I didn't like about this one was that there were like too many twists, in the sense of like your character is so unreliable, but like in the wrong kind of way. And I guess what I mean by that is the main character would tell you something and be like, remember that thing that I told you? That was actually a lie. And then they would do that again and be like, remember that other thing I told you? That was also a lie. Oh, that last thing that I just told you? That was actually a lie. So it was like a lie on a lie. And I think that it's one thing to have an unreliable character or narrator when they are, I don't know, like as a part of the twist that they are unreliable. But when the narrator is just explicitly telling you that they're lying to you just because, I don't know, like, it just wasn't for me, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So I didn't really love this one. That being said, I also was traveling to both Dallas and Vegas when I was reading this, so I had a lot of interruptions and it took me a lot longer in comparison to how long I usually take to read a book. So maybe I was just like disjointed from the story, but I just didn't love it personally. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I think that other people would really like this one. I've heard that it's gotten really great reviews, but this one just wasn't for me this time around. So the next book that I started reading was First Lie Wins, and this one was the first one that was on my 24-hour reading vlog. I started this one at like the 30% mark when I started the reading vlog, and this one was really, really good. I really liked this one a lot. The premise of this book is that there's a main character who has these jobs, if you will. So they change, but some of them are like she has to steal a painting from somebody's house. She has to get this football coach fired, but like not fired, but just like let go, like somehow like released from the position. So her job is to take on these other jobs, and she has no idea who her boss is. It's a secret. Eventually you come to find out that this job that she's taken is different than the others. So she's basically trying to figure out how to get out of the job that she's currently in, who her boss is, and also she's trying to keep her main identity safe because she has to continuously change identities for these different jobs. So it was a really interesting one. You kind of go back and forth between the present and then the past and learn a little bit about how she even got into this job and this situation, which I really liked. I think that a couple of the things that I really enjoyed about this was that she's a morally great character. It kind of was like that badass feel that 0 Days gave me, so I really liked that too. And overall, I just really liked her, even though she was not the best person. I just feel like you were still really rooting for her, which is why it felt so morally gray. I think that there were just the right amount of twists and turns, and like you always thought that you knew what was happening and that you could foresee what was going to go on next in the story, and then all of a sudden it was just like totally different. So I really loved this one a lot. I gave this one 5 stars. I think that it was very thrilling, but it was not a thriller, so that was also interesting for me, but I really liked this one a lot. The next book that I read was Hello Girls. This is the one that was co-written by Emily Henry and Brittany Cavallaro, and I wanted to listen to this one as an audiobook because I had heard mixed reviews about this story. I thought that it could be interesting to listen to rather than read, only because I wasn't super intrigued to read the book. I also will use audiobooks while I'm running to just like get another story in. So that's basically why I started reading this one or listening to this one. Basically, this one is about 2 main characters named Winona and Lucille, and they've been saving up their money. One of the characters is constantly just like putting all of her money, working as hard as she can and putting that money toward her family, while the other girl is the daughter of a famous weather reporter, I guess, like the guy who's on the news. They both have like their quirks about their life, I guess you could say. One of them is abused. The other one, again, just puts literally her whole effort into her family and is like not really the mom, but like effectively the mom. So they decide to team up. They're best friends. They decide to team up and they both want to just completely change their lives. They want to run away and they decide to head off to Vegas. They just like cannot wait until graduation to do this. I thought this book was like fun and kind of whimsical. It was definitely very lighthearted. It was not at all like too, I don't know the words, like there were definitely like darker themes, but it never went a dark route, if that makes any sense. It was always a little bit more on that whimsical and lighthearted side of things. So it wasn't hard to listen to. I think at some points it got really repetitive and I kind of was just getting over it after a while. And then the end kind of surprised me. So I felt very mixed about this one. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, but honestly, I'm between like a 2 or a 3 star. I don't know that I would recommend this one to somebody, but at the same time, if you really love Emily Henry and you're just looking for something a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more cozy, then I think this one might be a better one for you. The next one that I read was Wanna Know a Secret by Frida McFadden. This one was also part of my 24-hour reading vlog. This one is basically about a woman who has a YouTube cooking show. She's a small-time celebrity and pretty much her life looks perfect from the outside. But looking in, she actually has a lot of secrets. And I think this one just sounded so much more ominous on the Goodreads app than it actually was. It was basically like started off as like Pretty Little Liars type vibe where she was getting all of these cryptic text messages and then those text messages started relating to like her real life, like things were popping up in real life, not just via text or like image. So then she started freaking out, but this was another case of an unreliable narrator. You go halfway through to a different point of view and then you learn a lot more from that perspective. But I don't know, it just like didn't really do it for me. Neither narrator was actually correct and they were both just like making assumptions about other people or about each other. And I just felt like it really fell flat for me. Normally Frida McFadden is somebody who constantly I can rely on her books being amazing for me and like my taste, but this one was just like okay. I think normally I probably would have rated this one 3 stars, especially because I can just like go through a Frida McFadden book so fast. But because I took a break halfway through this one to read Frankenstein and then come back to it, I was already a little like out of the story and I just was kind of over it. So I think I gave this one 2 stars. There's only been a handful of Frida McFadden books that I was not really into, and unfortunately this was one of them. And the last book that I read was Frankenstein. Again, I'm going to give some spoilers for this one, but I really liked it. I don't remember what I rated it. I gave this one 3 stars. I feel like that's a fair rating only because I don't think I would like sit and read most classics. That being said, I did do that for this one and I did enjoy it. Like once I was actually reading it, I was enjoying it, but thinking about picking it up just felt like I would rather pick up any other book. This one did get me like reinvigorated to try out some more classics though. I feel like it was really cool to better understand what actually happens in these classics because we think that we grow up knowing what a story is, but then the reality is that we have no idea. So just to give you guys the story of like what actually happens in this book, we start off with this man who's like, he's like an explorer, if you will, and he is stuck in this like icy area, and that's when he comes upon Victor Frankenstein. He actually sees Frankenstein's monster first, and then he sees Frankenstein, brings him on board, and Frankenstein goes through his whole life story and tells him about his monster and so on and so forth. So basically explains to him that he was in school, he decided to create this creature or monster, and then after the monster was created, he just disappeared. Later down the line, his brother dies and finds out that the monster is the one who murdered his brother, although somebody else was blamed for it, and she was then murdered or put to the death sentence, I guess I should say. From there, then Victor Frankenstein just gets really depressed because he feels like this monster just killed my family member and then our community member as well. And he ends up coming back across his monster who really just wants to fit in. The monster just wants another partner in life, ideally a woman, to just be there with him because he realizes that everybody is just so scared of him because he looks like a monster. And Victor Frankenstein initially says that he's going to create this secondary being for for his monster, but then decides against it because he's just scared that, you know, this other creature that he creates could be violent. And so he decides like, no, I'm not going to do this. And the monster just wants to take revenge on Frankenstein from there on out. He tries to kill whoever he can around Frankenstein. He kills, again, his brother, but he kills his best friend. He kills other family members, and he also kills his wife. And Frankenstein ends up alone. And his main goal in life is now to catch his monster. His monster's main goal in life is to ruin his life. So they're just at it with each other. Frankenstein ends up dying, and the monster then comes on board with this like explorer guy and basically is like, now that he's dead, I have nothing to live for. There's no possibility of me having a partner. And also like now the only person who would even communicate with me is gone. And so he also just like disappears. And honestly, this one was like so interesting to me. It took me a sec to get into it. I think that, again, if I was not doing a 24-hour reading vlog, maybe it would have taken me a lot longer. But this one really did reinvigorate me, like I was saying before, to read more classics. I was really excited that I actually got through this one, and I actually understood a lot more than I thought that I was going to, which again, I was just like very proud of myself. So I really liked this one. I gave it 3 stars. Again, I think that's a fair rating for a classic. It's not going to be like my ultimate favorite book in the world, but I was really happy that I was able to get through it. So those are all of the books that I read so far in February, or not so far, that I read in February. I did want to tell you guys about my March TBR. I only have 4 books on my TBR, but that's because I'm not 100% sure how long some of these books are or whether or not I'm going to be able to get through them. But I figured I would tell you guys about them. So the first one is Flock by... I don't remember who it's by. Kate Stewart. This one is a book club book. Basically, I have a book club with a couple of friends, and this was a pick that my friend chose. So I actually have no idea what this one is about. I thought that it was a thriller, but then I started reading it just at the very tail end of my 24-hour reading vlog, and I think it's a romance, which is a little unfortunate because I wasn't really in the mood for a romance, but gotta go with what the book club suggests. So that's the first one. And then the next 3 books are all on the Sarah J. Maas Throne of Glass series. So Assassin's Blade, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight. I've heard mixed reviews of which one to read first, whether it's Assassin's Blade or Throne of Glass. And I also heard that Sarah J. Maas put out like how you should read the series and like what order to read it in. Assassin's Blade is technically like the prequel set of novellas, I guess you could say, to Throne of Glass. So I think you could read that one first, but I've also heard that you should read it after Throne of Glass. So I'm going to go back and look to see which one I'm supposed to read first, but I'm going to start off with Flock because my goal is to just like get into the series and just read through a bunch of it. I've heard really amazing things. I have read the ACOTAR series, but I did not finish it. I went through like, I think I have just like the last book that's currently out, which is A Court of Silver Flames, I think is what it's called. That's the last one that I have to read. I just haven't gotten around to it. I think that like switching characters and perspectives just kind of like, I don't know, just like I wanted something different for a little while, and then I took too long, and now it's been like 2 years since I read it, or maybe like a year and a half since I last read the series. So I need to pick that one back up, but I've heard that this one is fantastic, so I'm excited to give it a shot. And I got all of the books on the Libby app, so for whatever reason I don't end up liking them, I can always just like return them and read something else. But that is my goal. I'm going to go through the first 3 hopefully, and if I get to more, then amazing. I'm just going to keep reading the Throne of Glass series. I just want to get through as many as I possibly can, but I know some of them are very hefty, so we'll see. But those are all of the books for February and the upcoming books for March. So next month I will definitely let you guys know which ones I ended up getting through. If there's any books that you recommend that I read, let me know. I again am thinking about some more classics, but also I'm just like intrigued by any kind of thrillers or mysteries especially, and then every now and then your typical romance or something along those lines. I'm also really excited because another Emily Henry book is supposed to be released in April, I believe. So we are so close to getting a new Emily Henry book, and I love her books. That is all from me today. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm excited for the next one, and I will see you then. Bye guys.